Just 3 minutes ago, inside one of the most guarded rooms in Britain, a decision was made that may quietly rewrite royal history. The Earl of Snowdon, custodian of Princess Margaret's most intimate artistic legacy, has transferred her crown sketches not to Queen Camilla, but to Catherine, Princess of Wales. No announcement, no ceremony, and most shocking of all, Camilla was completely ignored. This wasn't paperwork, this was power. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The room did not erupt. There was no shouting, no public rupture, no dramatic confrontation. Instead, there was something far more dangerous: silence. The kind of silence that settles over institutions when something irreversible has just occurred. Princess Margaret's crown sketches were never casual doodles tucked into forgotten archives. They were guarded fragments of royal imagination, personal interpretations of sovereignty drawn by a woman who lived her entire life orbiting power without ever fully touching it. Those sketches carried longing, rebellion, and vision. They were not jewels, yet they glittered with something more enduring: legacy. And until today, they had never been publicly entrusted to anyone beyond Margaret's own bloodline. The Earl of Snowdon understood that better than anyone. As Margaret's son, he inherited more than memories. He inherited stewardship. He became the quiet guardian of her artistic voice, protecting those sketches from exhibition, exploitation, or political reinterpretation. For decades, they remained sealed in reverence, untouched by shifting alliances within the palace. That is why today's transfer lands with such force. This was not a sentimental gesture. It was a calculated handover from one custodian of legacy to another emerging center of influence. When Snowdon placed those sketches into Catherine's care, he did so knowing exactly what it would imply. And what it implied was impossible to ignore. Queen Camilla holds the title beside the king. Protocol would suggest that artifacts of royal heritage pass through her office, if only symbolically. Yet she was not consulted, not informed, not included. In royal life, omission is rarely an accident. To bypass the reigning queen in favor of the Princess of Wales is not a clerical oversight, it is a statement about direction. It whispers about alignment. It hints at a future being quietly acknowledged before it formally arrives. Inside palace corridors, reactions were measured but unmistakable. Advisors exchanged tight glances. Courtiers lowered their voices. There was no outrage, only awareness, because everyone understood the weight of symbolism. Catherine receiving Margaret's crown sketches feels larger than artistry. It feels like an inheritance of narrative authority, a recognition that the future queen is not merely preparing to wear a crown, but perhaps to reinterpret what it represents. Margaret once challenged tradition with elegance and defiance. Catherine embodies continuity wrapped in calm strength. The bridge between them suggests something deliberate, almost strategic, and that is where the unease truly begins. What if this is not about art at all? What if these sketches, drawn decades ago, now serve as quiet instruments of succession influence? The transfer happened without spectacle, without press, without fanfare. That kind of restraint often signals intent. It suggests planning rather than impulse. It feels less like nostalgia and more like positioning. A subtle recalibration of who shapes the monarchy's symbolic future, because in the monarchy, perception is power, and power rarely moves loudly. It shifts in whispers, in gestures, in decisions made behind closed doors. Today's decision may appear small to the public eye, just papers changing hands. But within the architecture of royal hierarchy, it echoes. It reorders emotional alliances. It strengthens one figure while leaving another conspicuously outside the circle. And once such a line has been drawn, even quietly, it cannot be erased. But this wasn't just a gift, it was a message. And to understand that message, we must return to the woman whose sketches are now at the center of a silent war. Princess Margaret was never meant to wear the crown, but she understood it better than most who did. Behind palace doors, she sketched not just jewels, but influence. Designs for crowns, alterations to tiaras, notes scribbled in the margins. They weren't fantasies, they were statements. And now, decades later, those intimate blueprints have resurfaced in the hands of Catherine. Why would Margaret's only son allow that unless something deeper was at play? Margaret lived in the shadow of sovereignty, and shadows often see what the spotlight cannot. She grew up studying the rituals, the posture, the invisible rules that governed who stood closest to the throne and who remained forever adjacent. While others admired the sparkle of gemstones, she studied structure. She questioned why certain crowns carried arches and others did not. She wondered what it meant for a woman to wear history on her head, yet remained constrained by it. Her fascination with royal symbolism was not decorative, it was intellectual, almost rebellious. In private, she treated tradition like clay, something that could be shaped rather than worshipped. Those sketches reflected that restless mind. Whispers have long suggested they contained alternative crown concept, subtle changes in proportion, daring reinterpretations of silhouette, even handwritten notes suggesting that modern monarchy required modern accession. Some saw them as artistic exercises, others believed they were coded critiques. Margaret never publicly challenged hierarchy, but her pencil sometimes did. Within those margins were questions about relevance, about legacy, about who defines the image of power. The crown, in her mind, was not a fixed relic. It was a living emblem, capable of evolution. Yet Margaret's relationship with monarchy was never simple. She adored its pageantry, thrived in its glamour, and fiercely defended its mystique. But she also felt its limits. She knew what it meant to be born royal and still be denied certain choices. That tension between devotion and defiance flowed through her designs. They carried personal undertones, reflections of a woman who loved the institution, yet quietly wrestled with it. Every altered arch and reshaped jewel felt like a whisper of autonomy in a life defined by duty. For decades, those sketches remained protected, almost sacred. They were not auctioned, not exhibited, not leaked. The Earl of Snowdon guarded them as fragments of his mother's private voice. In doing so, he preserved more than paper. He preserved intent, which is why his recent decision feels monumental. To choose Catherine as the new custodian is to make a statement about resonance. It suggests he sees in her something that echoes Margaret's spirit, not in flamboyance, but in strength held under control. The emotional weight of that choice cannot be overstated. A son does not lightly decide who inherits his mother's unfinished thoughts. He does not hand over her quiet rebellions to someone he considers temporary or ornamental. This was trust layered with symbolism. It was belief that Catherine would not merely archive those sketches, but understand them. Margaret admired a composure paired with resolve. She respected those who could endure scrutiny without surrendering identity. And in Cath, Irene's steady presence, perhaps Snowdon recognized the same quiet steel his mother once carried behind her smile. But legacy is rarely neutral. When one woman's artistic blueprint is entrusted to another rising figure, it creates an invisible alliance across generations. It suggests continuity where others might see competition, and as this silent alignment strengthens, another presence within the palace cannot help but feel its absence from the exchange. And yet, for someone else watching this unfold, the silence was louder than any announcement ever could be. Queen Camilla holds the title. She holds the rank, but in this moment, she held nothing. No invitation, no consultation, no courtesy call. The Earl of Snowdon didn't overlook her, he bypassed her. And in royal circles, omission is rarely accidental. Was this an artistic decision or a symbolic rejection? Because when heritage chooses sides, the implications echo far beyond paper and pencil. Camilla's connection to Princess Margaret's world was always layered, never effortless. Margaret belonged to a different era of glamour and guarded loyalties, an inner circle shaped by shared childhood memories and unspoken codes. Camilla entered the monarchy decades later, through controversy, resilience, and a long road toward public acceptance. She earned her place beside the king, but legacy is not awarded the same way rank is. It grows from history, from intimacy, from moments shared long before the cameras arrive. And in Margaret's lifetime, those moments did not include Camilla in the way they did others. Within palace tradition, artifacts of royal heritage, especially those tied to crown symbolism, would typically pass through the reigning queen's awareness, if not her hands. It is not merely courtesy, it is protocol woven into the monarchy's DNA. For Snowdon to redirect that flow was to quietly interrupt an expectatio, centuries in the making. That interruption did not come with headlines, but it carried weight, because in institutions built on ritual, breaking even a small ritual signals intention. Inside the palace, tension did not explode, it tightened. Advisors began measuring implications rather than voicing them. Some framed it as a private family matter, others understood the deeper optics. Margaret's circle, fiercely protective and at times unforgiving, never fully adapted to the changing landscape of royal alliances. There were loyalties formed in youth that endured beyond reason. And while Camilla eventually secured public legitimacy, there remain whispers that Margaret's old guard never entirely embraced her presence within the hierarchy. Whether fair or not, perception has a life of its own. The optics are impossible to ignore. A reigning queen quietly set aside, while the Princess of Wales is entrusted with symbolic heritage tied to the crown. It reframes narrative without a single speech. It suggests alignment with the future rather than affirmation of the present. Camilla may stand beside the monarch today, but this moment subtly centers Catherine within a lineage of feminine influence that stretches back generations. That shift is delicate, yet profound. Camilla's reaction, outwardly composed, reportedly carried an undertone of calculation. She has weathered storms before public scrutiny, private tension, relentless comparison. She knows when to speak and when to remain silent. But measured silence does not mean indifference. It means assessment. It means understanding that battles within the monarchy are rarely fought in public. They are navigated through patience and positioning. Still, even patience has limits when legacy appears to flow around you rather than through you. What makes this moment especially charged is the possibility that it signals pattern, not an anomaly. Today it is crown sketches. Tomorrow it could be something larger: patronage, influence, narrative authority. Once a precedent of bypass is set, it lingers. And in a family where symbolism defines strength, being excluded from symbolic gestures chips away at perception in ways that are hard to reverse. This may not be a loud dethroning of influence. It may be something subtler, more strategic, a gradual recalibration of where emotional allegiance lies within the institution. And if that recalibration continues, the implications will not remain confined to archives and artistry. But if Camilla was excluded, then what does Catherine's inclusion truly mean? Catherine did not ask for this. She did not campaign for it. And yet, the future queen now holds Princess Margaret's most intimate creative legacy. Not jewels, not property, but vision. The kind of vision that reshapes how a crown is worn and who deserves it. Why Catherine? Why now? Because sometimes power doesn't shout. It's handed over quietly, with intention that only insiders truly understand. For years, Catherine has built her position not through force, but through steadiness. While storms swirled around the monarchy, controversies, transitions, shifting public moods, she remained composed. That composure was never weakness. It was strategy disguised as grace. She understood that survival inside the institution requires patience, restraint, and the ability to endure scrutiny without fracture. And in that endurance, she quietly became a stabilizing presence. Not dramatic, not divisive. Reliable, the kind of reliability that earns trust when trust is scarce. Her influence has rarely been loud, yet it has been unmistakable. Subtle adjustments in tone, in presentation, in the way tradition meets modern expectation have often carried her imprint. She respects history, but she does not appear trapped by it. That balance, honoring the past while nudging it gently forward, mirrors what Margaret once attempted in her own coded way through those sketches. There is an unspoken symmetry there. One woman experimented with symbolic evolution in private. The other embodies controlled evolution in public. The decision to entrust those designs to Catherine signals more than admiration. It suggests belief in her aesthetic judgment, her sense of proportion, her understanding of what the monarchy must become to endure. A crown is not merely ornamentation, it is messaging, it is identity. To place Margaret's reinterpretations of that symbol into Catherine's care implies confidence that she will not misuse them, nor misuse them. It is an acknowledgement that she is not just preparing to inherit a throne, but to refine its image. Public perception strengthens that narrative. Catherine has come to represent continuity at a time when continuity feels fragile. In her, many see the promise of steadiness for the next era. She bridges generations with careful diplomacy, earning loyalty without demanding it. That matters, because monarchy survives on perception as much as protocol. When people believe in the future queen, they invest emotionally in the future crown, and when Margaret's legacy flows toward her, it reinforces that emotional alignment. There is also something deeply personal in this exchange. One royal woman, long defined by both privilege and constraint, quietly empowering another who stands on the brink of even greater responsibility. It feels less like coincidence and more like inheritance of spirit. Margaret admired strength wrapped in elegance, conviction delivered without spectacle. In Catherine, that combination is unmistakable. The transfer becomes not only symbolic, but almost poetic, a continuation of feminine influence that resists fading into history. Yet beneath the admirator ion lies something sharper. This gesture shifts generational gravity. It tilts influence toward the Wales line, toward what comes next rather than what currently reigns. And in institutions where even the smallest symbolic tilt can alter perception, that shift is powerful. Today it is artistic legacy. Tomorrow it may be ceremonial interpretation. Slowly, quietly, the axis of narrative authority may be moving. Catherine's rise has often been described as inevitable, but inevitability does not happen on its own. It is shaped by moments like this. Moments when trust is placed, when legacy is handed forward, when silence speaks louder than declarations. And as that trust settles into her hands, it raises a deeper question about what this means not only for her, but for the monarchy itself. Yet beneath the surface, this transfer may be less about artistry and more about the future balance of royal power. Titles command respect, but legacy commands loyalty. And inside the palace walls, those two forces don't always align. The Earl of Snowdon's decision has quietly drawn a line between inherited authority and chosen trust. Catherine now stands at the intersection of both, and Camilla, she may hold the throne beside the king, but in the battle of symbolism, something just shifted. Reigning power is immediate. It carries ceremony, protocol, and visible command. But enduring influence is slower, deeper, almost invisible at first glance. It lives in memory, in artifacts, in the emotional attachments people form over decades. A queen may preside over the present, yet legacy often determines the future. And in monarchies, the future is everything. That is why this transfer of Margaret's crown sketches feels larger than family sentiment. It places Catherine within a stream of historical continuity that stretches beyond current titles and into the realm of narrative inheritance. Artifacts are never neutral. A crown, a tiara, even a drawing of one each becomes part of the story. The monarch each becomes part of the story the monarchy tells about itself. Who touches those symbols matters. Who safeguards them matters even more. By entrusting those sketches to Catherine, Snowdon effectively allowed her proximity to a fragment of royal reinterpretation. Margaret's quiet challenges to tradition now sit in the hands of the woman expected to define tradition for a new generation that shapes narrative. It suggests that evolution will not come from the reigning center, but from the approaching one. Within palace circles, advisors are said to be divided. Some view the gesture as harmless, a private decision by a son honoring his mother. Others see strategy layered beneath sentiment. Optics, after all, are currency in royal life. They calculate headlines before they are written. They anticipate public interpretation before statements are released. And in this case, the interpretation is unavoidable. Catherine is being aligned with legacy power, not just ceremonial duty. That alignment strengthens her informal authority in ways no speech ever could. The timing sharpens the intrigue. Why now? Why not years earlier? Why not wait? Moments like this rarely exist in isolation. They often coincide with broader recalibrations happening quietly behind closed doors. As the monarchy navigates modern pressures, health concerns, and generational transition, positioning becomes critical. Margaret's legacy, once safely dormant, suddenly re-emerges as a subtle counterbalance to establishment rigidity. It represents adaptability wrapped in heritage. By linking that adaptability to Catherine, Snowdon may be signaling confidence in the monarchy's next chapter rather than its current one. Catherine's informal authority has grown steadily, almost imperceptibly. She influences tone without demanding attention. She sets exemplars without issuing directives. Over time, that quiet strength accumulates weight. Courtiers observe it. The public senses it, and now, with Margaret's sketches in her care, that authority acquires historical depth. It is no longer just about popularity or composure. It becomes about stewardship of legacy itself. Such shifts rarely announce themselves as revolutions. They feel incremental, but incremental change inside the monarchy can alter succession optics dramatically. When emotional allegiance tilts toward the future sovereign and her consort, the institution begins adjusting subconsciously. Decisions reflect it. Invitations reflect it. Symbolic gestures reflect it. Today's transfer may be one of those gestures, a soft recalibration of where influence truly resides. And as these undercurrents move beneath the surface, the distinction between reigning authority and rising authority grows sharper. The present remains intact, yet the future grows louder in subtle ways. What appears to be a simple exchange of artistic heritage might, in truth, be part of a larger strategic realignment, one that reshapes how loyalty flows within palace walls. And as whispers grow louder, one question lingers in every corridor of Buckingham Palace. The Earl of Snowdon didn't just choose Catherine. He chose William's future, because when Margaret's legacy bypasses Camilla and flows directly to the Princess of Wales, it speaks to the next reign, not the current one. Was this a quiet endorsement, a symbolic alignment with the monarchy's inevitable future, or something more deliberate crafted to strengthen William's position before his time? William grew up surrounded by stories of Princess Margaret, the glamorous, complicated aunt whose life unfolded in contrast to the rigid expectations of the crown. He witnessed how devotion to duty could coexist with personal sacrifice, how loyalty to the institution sometimes came at emotional cost. Margaret's memory within the family has always carried both admiration and warning. She represented brilliance, restrained by hierarchy, independence, tempered by obligation. For William, that legacy is not abstract. It is a lived cautionary tale about what it means to stand near the throne and still feel its weight. By directing Margaret's sketches toward Catherine, Snowdon subtly reinforces the Wales line as the vessel of continuity. It is not merely a maternal inheritance, it is a generational endorsement. It affirms that the emotional inheritance of Margaret's insight now rests within the branch of the family preparing to ascend. In monarchies, such alignments matter profoundly. They create an unspoken chain of legitimacy that stretches beyond official decrees. They tell insiders where confidence truly lies. There is also a deeper contrast unfolding beneath the surface. Charles's era has been defined by patience, by waiting, by navigating public scrutiny across decades. William's era, by contrast, is expected to embody renewal, measured but decisive, modern yet rooted. The generational divide is not hostile, but it is real. When Margaret's legacy bypasses the reigning queen and moves toward the Princess of Wales, it symbolically bridges Margaret's restless intelligence with William's anticipated leadership. It suggests that the future reign will be informed not only by tradition, but by thoughtful reinterpretation. Catherine's cultural legitimacy strengthens in this process. She is no longer simply the supportive consort, preparing for eventual queenship. She becomes a steward of heritage that predates her marriage, predates even her arrival into royal life. That shift deepens her authority. It roots her in the monarchy's emotional history, not just its present structure. And when a future queen is seen as chosen by legacy rather than merely by marriage, her position becomes more resilient. Within palace circles, some interpret the transfer as subtle succession signaling, not a challenge to the present sovereign, but a reinforcement of the next one. It quietly communicates stability. The line is secure, the future is aligned, the narrative is coherent. In institutions built on symbolism, that reassurance is powerful. It calms uncertainty before it has the chance to grow. Legacy, after all, is currency in monarchy. It is exchanged carefully, invested strategically, and never wasted. Snowdon's decision may appear personal, yet it operates within a larger economic system of influence. By placing Margaret reinterpretations of the crown into Catherine's hands, he strengthens William's eventual reign before it formally begins. He fortifies the emotional architecture surrounding the Wales household. He ensures that when the next chapter opens, it does so supported by more than protocol, it does so supported by inherited vision. And if this alignment was intentional, If it was meant to anchor William's future authority with the quiet blessing of Margaret's legacy, then the move was not accidental. It was precise. It was timed. It was aware of the currents moving through the palace. But if this was strategic, then someone inside the palace knew exactly what they were doing. The Earl of Snowdon has always avoided spectacle, but today he created one without saying a word. This was not an emotional decision. It was controlled, precise, almost surgical. By transferring Margaret's crown sketches to Catherine, he didn't just preserve art, he redirected narrative, and in the monarchy, narrative is survival. So what does he know that others don't? For years, he protected his mother's legacy with disciplined restraint. He understood that Princess Margaret's life had already been dissected by headlines, dramatized by history, and misunderstood by critics. The sketches were among the few things untouched by public appetite. They remained private, almost sacred, because he made them so. That kind of stewardship is not passive. It requires vigilance. It requires discernment about when to reveal and when to conceal, which makes his sudden decision to release them into Catherine's care all the more deliberate. Snowdon has observed the monarchy from a unique vantage point, close enough to feel its tremors, distant enough to evaluate its direction. He has witnessed shifting alliances, evolving public expectations, and the careful balancing acts performed behind closed doors. He knows how symbolism travels through the institution like electricity. A gesture here can ripple there. A silence today can echo for years. His understanding of these dynamics suggests that this transfer was not spontaneous. It was informed. There is also the weight of maternal heritage pressing against every element of this decision. Margaret was not merely a princess. She was a force shaped by both privilege and constraint. Her son carries that complexity within him. When he chooses who inherits her artistic reinterpretations of the crown, he is effectively choosing who continues her quiet dialogue with tradition. That choice is emotional, yes, but it is also strategic. He would not risk her memory being misread or diluted. He would place it only where he believed it would be understood. The timing intensifies the mystery. Catherine's influence has grown steadily, her role expanding beyond supportive presence into subtle cultural leadership. As public trust in her strengthens, the monarchy's future begins to orbit around her stability. Snowdon's move aligns perfectly with that ascent. It amplifies her symbolic authority at a moment when succession optics are already under careful scrutiny. Coincidence feels unlikely. Alignment feels intentional. And then there is the bypass of protocol. Royal customs are rarely ignored without purpose. For Snowdon to move around established expectations signals quiet resolve. It suggests he weighed potential backlash and proceeded anyway. That kind of confidence implies calculation. He appears neutral, no public statements, no overt declarations, yet the outcome subtly favors the whale's line. Strategic neutrality can be more powerful than open endorsement. It allows the message to land without the messenger appearing partisan. What makes this even more compelling is the possibility that this will not be his final intervention. Those who understand legacy know that influence rarely unfolds in a single act. It accumulates, it builds. Today's transfer may be the opening move in a longer, more intricate alignment of heritage and future authority. Snowdon may be ensuring that Margaret's vision does not fade into nostalgia, but becomes embedded within the monarchy's next era. In royal history, it is often the quiet decisions that redefine direction. A document signed, a title granted, an artifact reassigned. Each appears modest at first glance, yet together they reshape perception. Snowdon understands this. He understands that survival in monarchy depends on narrative continuity. By placing Margaret's reinterpretación of the crown into Catherine's hands, he subtly adjusts that continuity. And if his calculation is correct, the true impact of this gesture has only just begun to unfold. Because in royal history, small gestures often ignite the greatest transformations. It began with sketches, paper, pencil, private imagination. But today, those drawings may represent something far greater, a quiet reshaping of the monarchy's future. Catherine now holds a piece of Margaret's vision. Camilla stands outside that circle, and somewhere in the distance, a new era waits. The question isn't who holds the crown today. It's who is preparing to redefine it tomorrow. What makes this moment extraordinary is not the paper itself, but what it symbolizes. For generations, royal women have carried influence in ways history rarely records. They shaped tone, softened power, steadied institutions during storms. Yet their authority often lived in the margins, subtle, unspoken, powerful nonetheless. Margaret's sketches were part of that hidden current. They were her private negotiation with a system that both elevated and confined her. Now, by passing into Catherine's hands, that current flows forward. It becomes a symbolic passing of feminine royal vision from one era to the next. Catherine's role in the monarchy has always appeared measured, almost cautious. But beneath that composure lies preparation. She understands that ceremonial identity is not fixed. It evolves with the public's expectations. The crown is more than a relic of conquest. It is a message about relevance. If Margaret once dared to question how it should look, Catherine now stands in a position to influence how it will be perceived. Not through rebellion, but through refinement. Not through spectacle, but through steady recalibration. That is where the real transformation begins. Meanwhile, Camilla's position within this unfolding legacy grows increasingly complex. She holds her place beside the king, yet history may not remember her as the architect of the next chapter. Legacy does not always align with rank. It aligns with narrative, and right now the narrative is drifting toward the Princess of Wales. This does not erase Camilla's presence, but it reframes it. It subtly suggests that while she occupies the present, she may not define the future. That distinction, though quiet, is profound. The monarchy itself stands at a crossroads. Generational transitio is no longer a distant inevitability, it is an approaching reality. Institutions survive by adapting without appearing to change. They adjust tone while preserving structure. They refresh image while guarding continuity. Margaret's sketches, once private reflections of possibility, now serve as symbolic tools for that adaptation. Their transfer signals readiness for a shift that feels organic rather than abrupt. Public perception amplifies everything. People may never see those drawings in detail, yet the knowledge of their transfer carries emotional weight. It reinforces the idea that Catherine is not merely waiting for her moment, she is being entrusted with it. That trust deepens loyalty. It strengthens belief in the Wales line as the monarchy's stabilizing force, and belief, in royal terms, is power. There is something almost poetic in the continuity between Margaret and Catherine. One pushed against tradition quietly, questioning its rigidity from within. The other moves within tradition carefully, guiding it forward without rupture. Different styles, similar strength. Through this exchange, their stories intertwine. The restless energy of the past meets the composed resilience of the future. Together, they form a bridge across time, suggesting that evolution does not require destruction. It requires courage, wrapped in patience. And now the lingering question rises with unmistakable intensity. What will Catherine do with the sketches? Will they remain private heirlooms, cherished but unseen? Or will elements of Margaret's daring imagination subtly influence the shape of future ceremony? We may not recognize the moment when reinterpretation occurs. It may arrive quietly, disguised as refinement. But when it does, it will carry the imprint of a decision made without fanfare, without announcement, without apology. Because when the next crown is revealed well, either redesigned or reimagined, the world will remember the moment it quietly changed hands, just 3 minutes ago. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.